or 6 days. Why not A.J. Preller? He runs the Padres, and he brings in Hosmer. We get a little sense of what's cooking out there in Arizona with San Diego. A.J., nice to talk. How are you today, pal? Okay?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thanks on short notice. I appreciate that, too. All right, how's Hosmer fit in, A.J.? Give me a little rundown. How's it been here, this first training camp for him, moving to a different league? He's sort of the leader of your team. Let's get a little rundown on A.J. What can you tell me there? Or Eric, I should say. Let me tell you there.
I think he's had a great camp in terms of I think everything that you do your homework in terms of trying to sign the player and talk to a lot of different sources, and a lot of people that have coached him, been around him, et cetera, played with him, and then we've had a chance to see it firsthand, and I think he's just get a sense he's excited by some of the talent he sees here in our camp. I think, obviously a new start, so it's different for him being in KC all those years. But he's fit in, very, very well and, taking the leadership role, and we're looking forward to the year with him.
And part of the reason why you made this move, AJ, is intangibles, right? I mean, he's a young player who had a lot of influence with Kansas City, and with you having a lot of young players up, you thought his intangibles was worth the extra year that you had to give him. You thought those intangibles very, very important as far as your team is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot obviously went into the decision. Obviously he's a very good defender, very good around the bag, very good hitter. But definitely, a guy that had been in the situation in KC where they were a young team and they, went through a building phase and ended up getting to the highest part of the mountain in baseball, winning World Series, and just what he brings day to day. He's a very positive guy. He loves to play. You see that daily. He's very competitive. He's inquisitive. He asks a lot of questions, and he's a guy that relates to a lot of different players. So I think all that factored into our decision with him, and we've seen that here in this camp.
Well, there you go. Good to see it. Did you sell a ton of tickets? I mean, with the marketing, I'm curious about that. You were very active. You did a good job with it. Did you see a definitive buzz back home with ticket sales as far as this acquisition is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the people of San Diego definitely, San Diego fans very excited, and it's a great ballpark. It's obviously in the downtown area, Petco, and it's a great fan base. And I think they're excited to see a player of our caliber and the investment ownership made. And ultimately, I think the biggest thing is going to be we put a competitive team on the field, a team that's winning games. But I definitely think for the fans of San Diego, they're kind of seen through this building process the last couple of years. I think they're excited by it. But then to see somebody of Eric's caliber and just understand that, hey, we're not, this is not about 5 years from now. We feel like over the course of the next few years, our window's going to open up, and I think the fan base is definitely excited about that.
Does it change the GM's outlook for the year when you make this kind of move where you felt, a rebuilding year? That's not good. We're looking to develop more so necessarily than winning. Combination of both, but development's more important. And now you bring Hosmer in, which raises the expectation level, so maybe you want to win a little quicker than normal. How about that for you as the general manager of the team? What can you tell me about that?
I mean, I think, all along from like a planning standpoint, I think we've understood that, you build a foundation with, a lot of the players we've acquired the last few years via trade, international signs, draft players, and that's going to be the bulk of what we do. And then we were going to add, a piece or two and hopefully a big piece from outside. So I think, overall this year, I don't think you look at it as, you go from a team that is going to win X number of games, and if we don't, it's a negative, or overall it's not. That was not what the signing was about with Eric. I think it's to continue build and look up and have championship caliber players. And if he speeds that time frame up, by a period of time, we think he will. I think that's part of the plan, but it doesn't. We don't look at it as, we feel like now we have to get to 500 or something like that because Eric's part of the group. I think our goal is to be a championship team, and we'll go on our time frame with that.
All right. How many players? I know you got Tatis's kid there, who's I guess going to be a big player. That was a great trade you made with that. How many players are in your Padres system right now? 10? 8? How many players, AJ, do you have in your system right now that you as an organization have sort of labeled as not impact, but contributors on a good team? You got 10 of those guys? How many do you need to be feel comfortable? And how many does the Padres have right now? I know you got a good farm system. How many?
Yeah, it's probably the thing we're most excited about is daily here in spring training. You got the big league game, and then you have the minor league backfield games and minor league camp, and on our 4 fields. Again, I think, people have talked about us from outside that they feel like we have one of the better systems in the game. And, we think we have, quality and quantity, and there's depth. And, it's you need a lot. I think we feel like we have, we have a lot of guys that we're going to see over the course of the next, 4 or 5 years here in San Diego that we think have a chance to be regulars and potentially some plus players in that mix as well. You mentioned Fernando Tatis. Luis Urias is a second baseman that came up to busy camp and showed very well. He hit well last year in Double-A and in the fall league, and we sent him back down to minor league camp. We have some pitching prospects, Joey Lucchesi and Eric Lauer, that came out of the 16 draft that showed very well. Joey's still in camp, and that's kind of the first wave of guys that are that are coming up through the system. And I think the exciting part for us is we feel like there's multiple waves, and there's 2 or 3 different levels of guys that are going to be coming up, and that's what good organizations do. And we feel like we're getting closer to that point.
All right, so if you have 20 good prospects, you hope as an organization 5 stick. Is that fair, or is that not enough? How many out of 20 good prospects? How many you need to have to stick to really have a fruitful farm system? How's it work?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to say like a definitive number and say that hey, it has to be this number or that number. I think if I know from my seat, the more the merrier. It gives you options. It gives you the ability to make moves, make trades, and creates competition. So I think we just from our standpoint, it's not really about hey, get to this number or that number. I think we have a feel for where we're at overall, but I think it's constantly about getting more, getting guys that come in that fit a certain profile, and our scouts have done a great job with it, and I think we're going to see the results of that in the next few years.
Now the Mets went the pitching route, and they've been hurt a little bit, but they did get to a World Series. The Cubs went the hitting route and bought the pitching. The Mets did the exact opposite. What's the Padres' philosophy on that, AJ? Do you go draft the pitchers and find the hitters? Do you find just take the best player no matter what he is? What's the Padres' scenario there as far as farm system is concerned?
I think it's best player. Ultimately, I think, ultimately, you can say, hey, draft position guys because they're safer and, play every day and, a little more predictable. But then you're passing on a Clayton Kershaw or a Tim Lincecum or a Cole Hamels, up high in the draft, et cetera. You can talk about, the college player versus the high school player. I think from our standpoint, it really just comes down to the individual player and, being open-minded, understanding guys come from all different avenues and all different paths. And, I think from our standpoint, I think the exciting part for us, we have a blend. We have guys like Fernando Tatis that you mentioned earlier, and then, we have a Mackenzie Gore that was the 3rd pick in the draft last year. That's very exciting every day. So we feel like we try to be balanced, which I think is probably the answer, honestly, is getting the balance between the pitching and the offensive position group. That's kind of the way we've scouted over the last few years as well.
Do you have a preference of taking the high school player over the college player because you get 3 more years of development? Or if the player is equal, the Padres like the college player better, a little higher level, of course, a little more polished? What is I'm sure all organizations go about differently. What does the Padres feel about that, high school and college? Let me hear.
Yeah, our discussions were in the draft room and the preparation process, and throughout the year, the different meetings we have. It's best available guy, and you look up, and 2 years ago we took Paul Quantrill's son, with the 8th pick in the country out of Stanford. We took Eric Lauer, who's was up in big league camp and had a great year. Who was the D1 college pitcher of the year. And then we took Hudson Potts, who's a young third baseman, shortstop from Texas high school, 17 years old, that hit 20 plus home runs in A ball as an 18-year-old last year. So I think for us it's again it really just comes down to the individual player. And you look at the great teams, the Giant teams that you follow, Bumgarner coming out of high school and Lincecum coming out of college and Joe Panic coming out of it's all different ways to build it, and I think we don't we try not to get caught up on high school, college.
Yeah, there you go. And AJ Preller, well done here at the Padres. And how about the division, AJ? A lot of people think top to bottom, best division in baseball. You see them all in spring training. What's your take on that for a second?
Yeah, I was listening to your breakdown the other day of the NL West. I think it makes you better as an organization because there's no shortcuts with the other teams in our division. Obviously, Dodgers have been the class of the division here now for a period of time. I think they've got a lot of really good players and a lot of answers. Obviously, the Turner injury at the beginning of the year, but when you're running out Bellinger, Seager, and all those guys, Kershaw. They come in as the favorites with, the D-backs and the Rockies. I think we saw what they were about last year, and they basically returning their clubs. And then the Giants, we face them now 3 or 4 times in spring training. And you've got, obviously McCutchen, Longoria, some guys that are going to bounce back. So, we've got our work cut out for us here. And I think we talk about it as a positive from our end, because if you're going to come out of this division, you're battle tested and you're a legitimate playoff team. And I think it's going to be the challenge the next few years, because those teams are not going away anywhere, over the course of the next couple of years.
A lot of people think the Rockies might be the second best team. Do you buy that?
Yeah, and I've heard that. They've got a good club, obviously. I think, but it's every day. I mean, it's obviously when you go into Arizona and you're dealing with Paul Goldschmidt and and the group that they put together. I think overall, I think all those clubs are going to be strong, and the D-backs and Rockies last year were good really start to finish. And my guess is it's going to be the same type of dogfight this year in the NL West.
Good job, AJ. We will talk soon. Keep up the good work. Get off to a good start this Padre team. I appreciate you coming on here today.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, AJ Preller, some thoughts. Windy there at the end. That's why I cut it short. We'll continue here on Mad Dog Unleashed.